I think we've talked enough about that, and we can end on a wonderful story about one Carlos Kaiser. Because you mentioned, like, it wouldn't be a realistic thing, but cheating your way into being a professional football player, that's something you can see someone, like, risking it all for, and that's a real thing that happened.
And I'm very confused because how do you fake that shit?
Well, this is based on, it's not plagiarism because I fucking wrote this.
Okay.
But the article has yet to be released, and this is an article I wrote for today. I found out. I'm going to double check when I wrote it because it's still not gone up yet, and I think this sums up how much I wrote for that website.
Oh my god.
This was written by me 4 years ago.
Holy shit.
And it's still in their archives because they still have enough articles written by me to put one up a week.
Oh my god.
So this is why I am so passionate about writing, and why, it's piss easy if you're good at it, or you're passionate, because I wrote enough articles for one website that 4 years later there's still ones I've not published yet. Anyway, so this is not plagiarism because I fucking wrote this shit, but I am just going to go through it, and hopefully people won't get hopefully Daven won't get mad if they eventually do make a video out of this or talk about it on their podcast.
Yeah.
And this is because I've still got access to the archives because I go in there every now and again just to double check research.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll go, I remember something. Oh, but I wrote an article about that for this website. Let's go check the research and just double check. Anyway, so this is a story about Carlos Kaiser. And you know what? I'm going to read it in its entirety.
Okay, yeah.
And you can just interject when you want, because this is a really, really interesting story. And it's obviously not going to get told for a while if Daven's happy to leave it in the archives for 4 years. It's titled Carlos Kaiser, the Forrest Gump of Football. So the game of soccer, henceforth referred to football to state my English sensibilities. So fun fact, I wrote these articles, I should say, to be read out aloud by Simon Whistler.
So you write it in that perspective.
Yeah, so I write it, or when I found out these would be made into videos, I wrote them with the idea in mind. They would be eventually read out loud by an Englishman with a posher accent than mine. So I continue. It's full of players who have achieved almost legendary status. Perhaps the most legendary of all is Brazilian striker Carlos Henrique Raposo, if only because he managed to collect a salary for 20 years and only played about 30 games. Again, well, not again, but for people who may not know why that's a big deal, I helpfully in this article, so Karl from 4 years ago, clarifies, before we talk about that though, a disclaimer. Now, although we know that a man called Carlos Raposo exists and that he probably played football in some capacity, the veracity of what we're about to tell you is difficult to ascertain. To explain, Raposo's entire career, supposedly 2 decades long, is the product of a number of lies and years of subterfuge on his behalf, and it's only claimed that despite being signed for dozens of teams over the years, he only ever played a handful of games, for reasons we'll get to in the meat of this article. As a result, evidence of his career is sparse at best, and it's hard to say with any certainty how much of what we're about to tell you is true. With this in mind, we ask you to take what we're about to tell you with a pinch of salt and know that we've endeavoured, me, not we, I have to say we, because you have to write from this, this is a team of people writing this, but it was all fucking me, to tell you the most accurate possible version of this story, to the point that our author, me, went as far as enlisting the help of a Spanish friend to read through all the foreign language sources that inevitably cropped up while researching this, which I actually had to do. I had to get someone who spoke Spanish and translated. This is a true story. I know someone, and their job, and this is the most boring job I've ever heard of, their job is translating washing machine repair manuals into German and Spanish.
Oh my god.
So they get sent the thing in German, Spanish, or English, depending on where it's been released, and get told, Joe, those booklets you get you never read.
Yeah.
Translate it into the other languages that you speak.
Oh my god.
And that's their job, and they hate their life, but they get paid very well for doing it.
Okay, fair enough.
And for anyone who's not too familiar with football, a striker having a 2-decade-long career and playing 30 games is fucking ridiculous.
So in
footballers play 30 games a year.
Well, yeah, in the English league, you play 38 matches just in the Premier League now, or whatever league you're in, and then you also probably have matches in other cups as well.
Yeah, so playing 30 games in 20 years is like virtually unheard of. So, let's begin by telling you the story of Carlos Raposo's life the way he's been telling it. So, born in 1963 in Brazil as a youth, like many of his peers, Raposo harboured dreams of being a famous football star. The only problem was that he possessed no real affinity for the sport whatsoever. However, what Raposo did have was the athletic build of a footballer, an incredibly charming personality, and a host of high-profile friends who were more than happy to do him favours. Individuals who it's claimed are friends with Raposo include Edmundo Alves de Souza, Romario de Souza Faria, the latter of whom is consistently ranked as one of the greatest football players of all time. So some of his friends include the greatest footballers to have ever lived.
Yeah.
Allegedly. And it says,
Allegedly,
So his alleged modus operandi at the beginning of his career was to call one of his more talented friends into a sign of the new club and simply ask for a 3-month trial, which they were usually more than happy to do. During his interview, Raposo would formally request time to get fit before attending a proper training session, at which point he uses formidable athleticism to make an impression on the club's coaches, who assume his ability to run and lift weights would translate into tangible footballing skill. Which is fair, especially considering he was being recommended by very talented footballers.
Yeah.
After this, as soon as he attended a proper training session, he was expected to do anything more than run and jump. Raposo would feign a crippling injury by kicking a ball as hard as he could and falling to the ground, clutching his hamstring, a common injury for footballers.
Oh, God.
So, a tactic that works surprisingly well due to the fact that things like MRI machines, which could have diagnosed the injury in seconds, weren't yet commonplace. To quote Raposo himself about this unorthodox method of making the cut, there were no MRI scanners in those days, so they had to believe me.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep, so once he was declared injured, Raposo could safely wait out the rest of his trial period without worrying about playing and still collect a paycheck. To keep his teammates on his side, Raposo would arrive at hotels his teams were due to stay in a few days earlier, specifically to fill them with local women to entertain his friends in between matches.
Oh, fucking hell.
In the process, netting in more contacts who'd be willing to sing his praises when he inevitably applied to another club. So the idea here is, calls up one of his many friends of, would you put in a word for me for a trial? That asks the player would go to his manager, is he a good guy? Oh, he's great, I love him. I'd love to be on our team again.
Yeah.
Getting him, so it's that thing of like, you've got to grease the wheels a little bit, and once you're in one, you're in them all.
Oh, man.
So it says here that Raposo would also constantly talk on a cell phone in perfect English, telling friends that he was in talks with clubs in Europe that were interested in signing him to scare managers into either extending his contract or raising his wages. According to Raposo, the phone was a toy, and although he spoke fluent English, he just spout gibberish statements into the receiver since he knew none of his teammates or his managers could understand him. So all they would do, they'd just get word of, do you know Raposo's speaking to some guy in Europe? Is he? Yeah, oh God, we better give him more money then.
Yeah. Extend his contract, give him more money, man.
When his time with a given club came to an end, Raposo would simply repeat the formula with another club, and according to him, it worked, with the brazen Brazilian claiming to have played for a host of well-known Brazilian clubs during his career, including Vasco da Gama, Botafogo, and Flamengo, as well as having brief stints in France, Mexico, América, and Argentina. Raposo to score these lucrative gigs was a combination of his contacts and the good press he was able to spin that into. For example, Raposo claims that numerous column inches were dedicated to him in his native Brazil while he was playing there, and although he never scored a single goal, his name was always flanked by words like gunner and scorer, adjectives cherry-picked from quotes by legends of the sport whom he called his friends. So what he'd do is he'd just single out, here's an article in a Brazilian newspaper that I'm in, and look at the quotes that are using it, like, oh man, he's a cannon for a foot, when it's actually written about one of the people he played alongside. But he played alongside these very good players. Well, if he's in the same caliber as these players, he must be good. And he says here that sometime during his career, Raposo adopted the nickname the Kaiser as a nod to the legendary German player Franz Beckenbauer, who was known by the same moniker due to his dominance and leadership while playing. If it wasn't clear from the rest of his article, Raposo gave this nickname to himself. And again, being so closely associated with such a legendary footballer only made him look like a more attractive prospect to sign.
Yeah.
And it says here, though, Lucas, so far, thoughts on this legend?
This is a fucking hustle.
I hope they make a movie about this one day. This is... the Forrest Gump of football is not an inaccurate description of this guy. He just stumbled ass backwards in success.
The thing is, though, I don't think he stumbled. This was all very intentional.
It was all very calculated. So we have here, although Raposo usually avoided stepping on the field like it was coated in landmines, I'm proud of that joke, there were occasions on which he wasn't able to avoid doing so, and as a result, he does appear to have a legitimate, traceable football record, albeit a very hazy one that's mostly in Spanish and French. For example, he played a single game with the Brazilian team Bangu, and there's a purported newspaper headline from this time he was signed that roughly translates to, "The Bangu already has its king, Carlos Kaiser." According to one source, Raposo was able to avoid playing in his first game with the team when he was brought on to substitute for another player by intentionally getting into a verbal argument with the fans from the sidelines, thus getting the referee to send him back to a locker room before he'd even stepped onto the pitch.
Oh my god.
For abusive language. Raposo was then able to somehow spin this into an extension of 6 months to his contract by telling the president of the club that the person he was arguing with had called him a thief.
Oh no.
So when the president of the club called him and why the fuck did you get sent off in your first 5 minutes? Oh, I was doing it to defend your honour. He called you a thief.
Oh man.
And then he got a 6-month extension to his contract.
Later in his thing is, like I was gonna say, if he occasionally plays a match, the thing is, I think most footballers when they come back from an injury have a bit of a shit few games anyway.
Yeah.
So you could kind of like, if he did have to play a match, just play it off as like, oh well, I haven't played in a while, my hamstring's still feeling a bit.
But bear in mind, Lucas, as well, something I should point out about this guy is he literally never scored a goal in his entire career.
That's amazing.
His position was striker, which I'll get to in a minute. So later in his career, Raposo moved to France and signed with a Division 2 team called, I'm going to pronounce this awfully, Simon Whistle will pronounce it right, but I'm not gonna, Gazalek Ajaccio, where he made sporadic appearances, mostly limited to kicking the ball up the field and showboating for the crowd, who were more interested in the novelty of having a supposed Brazilian legend on their team in his actual performance. In his first ever game with the team, Raposo was able to avoid playing entirely by simply walking onto the pitch and kicking every single ball available into the crowd while warming up. His team, thinking he was playing to the crowd, which was quite larger than usual, and filled with people eager to see their team's new Brazilian superstar, allowing him to do this, not realising that Raposo had kicked literally every single ball they had lying around. When the time came to start the match with no ball, the two teams called it a draw and exercise for 90 minutes. What a fucking legend!
Oh!
What a fucking amazing hero this guy is.
Jesus Christ.
Do you know what, Philip Mushin? This is how it's done.
It is.
This is how you this is if he plagiarised and ended up somehow writing speeches for Oscar nominations or something, then I'd be impressed. But no, man, you have to do it in review Dead Cells. God. So, as Raposo played in a time before extensive online stat tracking and ubiquitous sports coverage, we have no way of knowing what his career record was, though most sources say he played around 30 games during his 20-year career, the majority of which were for the aforementioned French team, with whom Raposo claims to have played for, and I quote, 20 minutes per game, a few minutes each season.
Oh, man.
In addition to this, he never scored a single goal, an impressive feat when you consider that his role on the pitch was striker, which for non-football fans mean his entire job on the pitch was to score goals.
Yeah.
He retired from the sport at age 39 and remained amazingly unrepentant about his deception, openly admitting in interviews with Brazilian and French press that he regretted nothing about what he did because the clubs he played with treated their players so poorly, being quoted as saying, "Clubs already deceived so many players, someone had to be the avenger of those guys." Today, Raposo makes ends meet as a personal trainer and he occasionally gives interviews about his career, which he continues to embellish upon endlessly, making the veracity of his frankly amazing life story, quite sadly, impossible to know the full extent of.
Yeah.
And then we have some bonus facts. Would you like to hear some bonus facts?
Hell yeah.
So we've got bonus facts. In Brazil, Raposo is sometimes referred to affectionately as the Forrest Gump of football, as an obvious nod to the fact he basically stumbled ass backwards through his career and was somehow still able to come out on top. That one about him kicking all the balls off the pitch is fucking amazing.
That is great.
That is a next level hustle.
We realised that we had no fucking ball to play with.
And then we have here, this is my favourite one. While researching the piece, our author, me, Karl, hello, noted that the number 171 kept being referred to in Spanish language pieces about Raposo. After some digging, I found out that this is slang in Brazil for scam or con man, because Article 171 of the Brazilian Penal Code quite fittingly defines crimes of fraud. And what a fucking amazing story. So, Lucas, did you think that when you said, there's no way you can cheat your way into a career as a professional football player, that there was going to be a story about a guy who did exactly that?
I had no fucking clue. I was like, you know what? Okay, off the top of my head, what's something that would be impossible to fake? Yeah, being like a professional athlete.
What's the most ridiculous thing you could pretend to be an expert at and get away with?
And apparently you can do that too.
And you set me up so perfect for that, and I'm glad that's not been published yet, but that's an old-ass article from my days writing for today. I found out that's sadly not gone up yet, because that's an amazing story, and to my knowledge, I am the only person who's ever done a full breakdown of that guy's life story in English.
Oh, wow.
Because literally every source I consulted was in fucking Spanish. And I had to get that mate in, and I had to pay him. So I got paid, the money I got paid for writing that article went straight to that guy for translation services. I felt so bad because, it took him all day to translate it and then send me the gist of what was going on.
Yeah,
and, to double check claims that I was making. Because I run it through Google Translate and then getting to double check it again. But I was by that point, I was so intrigued by the guy that I have to tell this story because there's no English version. There's no English version of this out there. I want to be the first. And I'm hoping now that what happens is Philip Mution...